Is that better?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. So I'm excited to talk with you about our nonprofit, Stronger Together. Our mission is really to create more collaboration and cohesion as we reduce toxic stress and increase resilience in our community. Now, I'm here today to talk to you specifically about our first initiative, which is the Cardiff model. The Cardiff model has been proven to reduce and prevent violence in communities, and I'm so excited that it just kicked off a couple of weeks ago. So I've been a teacher on the north side of Springfield for about 19 years. I've been a behavior interventionist for about 4 of those 19, the last 4. And in that role, I walk alongside students who are feeling really big feelings and are having explosive behaviors. And I get to help them calm and find some different ways that would be more helpful to show their emotions. I've always felt passionately about walking alongside students and their families whenever they're experiencing challenges. And that really has evolved throughout the years. Initially, I felt really frustrated with the adults, to be completely honest, and felt like they just needed to pull it together, right? And do what's best for kids. But really quickly, I realized that these adults that I was frustrated with were really these kids just all grown up. They were leading with love and as many skills as they had to offer, and sometimes still falling short in their ability to navigate adulthood smoothly, let alone parenthood, and especially parenthood when it came with their children having some big behavioral issues, which happened often. Now, I continued to work alongside families even more so, and that intensified during COVID, when I helped a couple of women leave some abusive violence situations within a few months of each other. In that process, I found that, first of all, we have amazing resources in our community. I think the last person who shared was talking about how we have like 3,000 nonprofits in the area. So I know that we have amazing resources, but as I was working with these women, I found that it was incredibly challenging to navigate through that system, especially whenever you're in crisis. I also found that there were some procedures that were put in place to really help that process that weren't serving their intended role, and we're actually working more at speed bumps than pathways to healthier, happier lives. Now, in that process, I had found those things out that were challenges, and so I went and spoke out at City Council, imploring them to start a committee to really investigate what other cities were doing. This isn't a problem that's unique to Springfield. I was wondering, how could we find other cities that were doing this work to create more collaboration and cohesion amongst all of these amazing resources to decrease the toxic stress that our families were experiencing and increase resilience. I was told by City Council and countless community partners that I'd reached out to over the next several months the same-ish response of, Krista, that's such a great idea and it's so needed. You should totally do that and let us know how it goes. And after what felt like the billionth time of hearing that, I did start our nonprofit, Stronger Together Springfield, in 2021. And I'm excited that we have officially kicked off the Cardiff model to reduce and prevent violent injury that we're going to talk about today. Just a couple weeks ago, we kicked that off. Violence and trauma have really shown up as huge patterns to look at and notice throughout my educational career, but that really came to a tipping point last year when I was helping a 5th grader navigate through a big explosion, and he grabbed my head and slammed it against a wall, dislocating my jaw and creating an intense, for me, concussion. This student had been a victim of violence himself. He had witnessed loved ones be victims of violence, and there was violence in his community on a routine basis. It helped really highlight how much we need to get upstream from all of this violence and prevent it from happening in the first place. As I was doing research to figure out what can we do to stem the flow of violence, the Cardiff model really stood out. It stood out because the CDC and World Health Organizations both recognize the Cardiff model as a proven way to reduce violence and prevent it from happening. Police officers have collected data on where violent injury is happening for a long time. And they've also known that they're not capturing all of the violence that's happening because sometimes people don't feel comfortable reporting to the police for whatever reason they may have. They estimated that number of underreported violent acts as about 58%. But in Cardiff cities, or cities that are implementing the Cardiff model, like Atlanta or Milwaukee, they've been doing so for about a decade. And they've found that that number is closer to 83 to 93% of all violent injuries that are ending up in emergency rooms. So pretty serious injuries are never reported to the police. So that makes it really challenging to know what interventions are going to be most helpful, where they will be most helpful, and to measure the success of those interventions without that kind of data to look at. In Cardiff in the UK, they've been doing this model for decades. They actually started the model, and they found that there was a 32% reduction in police recorded violent acts and a 42% reduction in hospital admissions due to violent injuries in the cities that were implementing this model. That led to tremendous cost savings. For every dollar that was invested in these cities in the model, 19 were saved for criminal justice costs, and about $15 were saved for hospital-related admissions due to violent injury. I was really excited to see what this might look like in Springfield, and have spent the past 4 to 5 years trying to build this model that just got implemented the beginning stages a couple weeks ago. It's broken into 3 main parts. The first one is collecting and understanding that violence data that hospitals are seeing, but we don't have captured anywhere else. So Cox Health's forensic nursing team has begun collecting data in their emergency department for any patient who comes in due to someone intending to do them harm. If the patient is willing, of course, this is completely voluntary and anonymous, the forensic nursing team asks them a few questions to better understand when and where the injury is happening, and a couple of other things you can see on the screen. Because this is never connected to any electronic medical record, and it's never traceable back to any individual, it's then able to be shared with MSU's public health program. They are able to analyze that data for patterns and get it prepared for the executive board to be able to look at it and make some decisions that we'll talk about in a second. I have a sample heat map up on the screen here, and it is not actual data. I want to reiterate that, not real data. This map up here is something that we put in fake data points as we were trying to figure out what this hotspot map might look like. We've been incredibly responsible stewards of this data, and we take it really seriously because we understand that it has the potential to maybe negatively impact an area economically or socially as people see areas that are high in violence. So this actual data that we're collecting that is not represented on the screen is only shared with the people who absolutely have a need to know and have signed a confidentiality agreement to not disclose this data to other people. But I felt like it was really important that you see what this hotspot map would look like in practice so that you can see that even the pinpointed hotspots are really several blocks in diameter. It's not traceable back to any individual or individual incident, but does help us understand where to focus our efforts. So once the executive board is able to analyze those patterns, look at those hotspot maps, they're able to select a neighborhood that we are going to be working with for several months. We're going to call them our Leading with Resilience neighborhoods. Once there's been a neighborhood selected based on need from the violent injuries that they're seeing in that area, I will reach out to those neighborhoods to find one that is that has the capacity and the willingness to start implementing some interventions to reduce and prevent violent injury. Once we find an area that has the need, willingness, and capacity to implement interventions, I will start working alongside community partners and hold monthly neighborhood events. These events will help collect the feedback from residents in these lived experiences to know what's going well in their communities and what are some things that could really be helpful to implement. We'll also have educational components to help them better understand how trauma and resilience plays a role in our bodies and minds. And we'll provide opportunities for action projects that are based on community feedback. And, Sterling just threw me off with a wrap it up thing. Okay, and I'll walk alongside community partners to make sure to strengthen up the systems that they already have in place, because they are already working super hard to make sure that they're having the best impact that they can on their neighborhood. Once that has been selected, that neighborhood, they are going to nominate 2 community leaders to join our executive board. The executive board and community leaders will look at all of that community feedback and all of the hospital data to select some research-based interventions that best meet the needs of that area. We'll continue to meet monthly to revise and expand interventions based on the data and what it's showing each month. And see, I wrapped it up, Sterling. I planned it, I promise. Okay, so our next steps. Mercy is finalizing their MOU to participate. They're a larger corporation, so they just had a few more hoops to jump through, but we're really excited for them to join us in this. And we're at the point where we're really seeking additional funding for this next fiscal year. We've received a $30,000 grant from the American Public Health Association, but we're looking for more long-term funding to create stability for this project. And we're really excited about more initiatives that are to come as soon as the Cardiff model is solidly set in place. Okay, now we welcome your feedback, and I'm so excited about this.
Thank you so much. Great presentation.
Thank you so much.
We're now ready for our Q&A part of our program this morning. This is how it will work. I will come around with the microphone. You just raise your hand, state your name and your organization, and then you can give feedback or ask your question. I'm going to ask the first question. Tell me, without giving us any names, can you give us a success story that you had in the past working with a family?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me think. One that comes to mind is so I had some students who had some really big behavioral incidents, and actually worked specifically with just kindergarten for a couple of years with kindergartners with really big behaviors. And I had a student who had witnessed a lot of violence and was reenacting that with me and was saying really hurtful, horrible things that he'd heard said to his mom. It was a really challenging situation, and I talked with mom about it. Mom was young and said, "Oh, that happened like 2 years ago. I thought he'd be over it by now." And really helped her realize that actually this is going to be a lengthy healing process for both her and her son. I encouraged her to connect with some resources to try to get some help for herself. She wasn't quite ready to do that just yet, but was encouraged to make sure to seek out healthier relationships. And in my work with her son, he was actually able to repair what seemed like a lot of wounds that he had experienced, and ended up seeking me out for comfort in situations where he was having conflict, where he would have just exploded and pushed or hit, but instead was saying, "This is really hard, I need help," and was holding my hand while we talked through the situation, which doesn't sound maybe like a huge success story, but I promise it is very big that he was able to stop that behavior and see me as a person who could be someone who was trusted. So that was a huge success for me. Yeah, thanks.
Debbie Rowell with House Theory Realty. One of the things I think that we don't think about when we're in communities is the return on investment of money that we spend. Because we just think that we're doing output, and we don't see that if there isn't investment, that the costs further down the road are way more expensive.
Yes.
True dollar type thing. What are some of the things you've seen that are creating a lot of these problems? Like, do you see any baseline things that are kind of, is there poverty, lack of education, or what are some of those things?
That's a great question, and I have a lot of things that I've noticed, but I'm really excited to look at the data specifically to see what the data is showing. our Missouri State's public health program is really excited to overlap some things on the hotspot maps to see what's the income level of that area. How close is the nearest grocery store? How close are green spaces? Are there a lot of pawn shops? Are there a lot of alcohol stores close by? Those are all things that we're really excited to look at in particular. I can say that trauma is definitely a common thread. I've worked at really high need, high poverty schools. And so that's kind of all I've seen. So I can say that there's a correlation, but that just really is all I've seen. I really think that the common thread, no matter who I've talked to on north side schools or south side schools, is that trauma piece. Like there have been some really hard things that the family has gone through without the proper support of how to navigate through that in a healthy way. We've all had things where it was really hard to go through, but with support systems, we've been able to manage our way through. And some families just don't have that. Yes.
Good morning, I'm David Sims of the David Sims Coaching Company, and I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. However, when I see your presentation, it seems to me like it's very, very complicated. And what I would suggest that you do when you're going out, instead of trying to recruit people by going through your entire, because I have a feeling you could have gone for another 30 or 45 minutes on that. So, but what happens is you're gonna lose your people. Eyes are gonna start glaze over, and what I would suggest you do is to be able to figure out how you can describe what you do in 25 words or less.
Yeah.
So that when you approach someone, they're either gonna say yes or no, I will be interested, and then you go into a little bit more detail. But if you're trying to recruit people with this whole time presentation, to me, it's very, very busy, very cumbersome, and very difficult to understand what you're really doing.
Okay, well, I appreciate your feedback. I do have an elevator pitch, but for this presentation, I really wanted you guys to understand the nuts and bolts of it and appreciate that feedback very much. Thank you.
You might have been better off to go with your elevator speech.
Yeah, well, thanks for the honest feedback. I know who to come to when I need it straight.
Hi, I'm Kim Murphy with Lamar, the Billboard Company. I think you did a great job. And I think you've done and I did not, listen. I kicked him under the table. You just didn't see that. So, but one of the things that I'm so impressed with is all the work and all the research, and you've done a lot of steps. When you say Cox Hospital and Mercy, and all the things that you've done, it seems like they would see you as, oh my gosh, we need to grab onto this and do this, and for them to start getting grants. And there's grants everywhere. There's some available that could tie into different levels of what you're doing. But I can see that Mercy probably, I know they have grant writers. Cox Hospital has grant writers. I suggest maybe you should ask them some of those questions, because that could be an easy.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think I've been worried. I'm a very humble person and it's hard for me to ask, I'm like, oh, they're already partners and they're already doing so much. I hate to ask more of them, but I really appreciate that encouragement to just ask. That would be helpful. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Michael Scharf in Moving Memory Life Story Productions. One of your questions up here for the feedback of does the value of this work feel clear enough to invest in? I think yes, once we understand it, similar to David's feedback of, simplifying elevator pitch. I would take that a step further and see if there are any people or families that you've helped that would be willing to do testimonials to show the impact of the work. People really respond to that kind of storytelling, especially when it's something like this that's so close to home. As someone who's lived a lot of this, it is very impactful and very important, the work you're doing, but it's also really hard to convey all the ripple effects in an elevator pitch. But if you can show the families that got together and then had so many opportunities because they overcame the violence. I think having that and then showing a little bit more, so some visual storytelling, if any of that's in your budget, but definitely the families that you've already helped, I think would be your strongest tool in showing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Samantha with Individualized Pets and Property Care. My question to you, are you partnering with any of the other nonprofits that actually deal with the people who have the trauma? as you're collecting this data, because in my line of volunteer work, I also work with people who have been traumatized and help them. And a lot of them don't stay here with the nonprofits. They actually go to other counties to receive support in that village type mentality of we're gonna help you get through this. They can give you some extra data too.
Well, I appreciate that. I haven't looked at other counties' nonprofits as much just yet. I have reached out to Webster County Health Department and have talked with them a bit, but we're trying to just focus on Springfield. But to answer your first question, yes, I have been working with other local nonprofits and have talked with them, like Harmony House, Greene County Family Justice Center. I've talked with the Child Advocacy Center, the Victim Center, Jordan Valley, lots of different people in town, and the Dream Center as well. I could go on and on. I've talked with lots of them, and
There's a few though that not as publicized because they are very one-to-one, and you're gonna have to be very specific when you're talking with the bigger ones to get those connections.
yeah,
Because they value the privacy of that recovery process.
Yeah.
Basically what happens there stays there and they just don't talk about it.
okay. Well, if you have other people that I could be reaching out to, please let me know. And that is something that I absolutely want to make sure that we do, is just to keep everyone in the loop as we move forward, because cohesion is like one of our biggest things that we're trying to create. So thank you for that.
Madonna Griner, 21 Reasons to Say Thank You, and Barnes Backroads and Byways Photography. She kind of took a lot of my question, that same thing. But one other nonprofit, great presentation, by the way. I enjoyed the details. It was good to know the ins and outs of it. And congratulations to you for persevering and coming through with this. But
Thank you.
one other nonprofit I might add to hers, if you aren't aware of them, is Flourish. They're working on the west side of town, and I'm glad to see you partnering with these other organizations and avoiding a duplication of services. So thank you, and good luck.
Well, thank you very much. And just to clarify, we're seeing ourselves more as like the glue that's bringing people together. We're not going to be providing direct services because we know a lot of people are already doing that work. We're really wanting to make the system easier to navigate and bring people together, to just clarify that system and process. So thank you very much for that, and I will reach out to them. Yes, thank you. Yes.
Hi, Dustin Farrell with Valiant Group and living in the Ozarks. My question is, you have a few things like say MOU. Go into detail about that, explain what that is, because not everybody here knows that lingo, right? Simplify it as much as possible. I can agree with some of the people who said simplification is good. And then how are you guys different, and why another nonprofit versus, is there, tell us about those gaps.
Yeah, well, great question. And we need to start a tally, David. Have you been tallying? Like who's saying simplified? Who's saying? Yeah. Okay. But I agree with you. The MOU language and things like that were things that I did not know about until someone had mentioned that. It's a memorandum of understanding for anyone who didn't know. I had to Google it. So thank you for that feedback. And your second question is going to come to me.
How are you different from other nonprofits?
Thank you. So again, I never wanted to make a nonprofit. I was a teacher and told people who kept telling me that often. But I think that the difference is, especially at the time that I was starting this nonprofit, the focus on creating more cohesion without providing a direct service necessarily, and really focusing in on how trauma is impacting our community, and how to build resilience just wasn't something that was being covered in actionable steps that were data driven. I can't tell you how many people, because I just kept thinking, I just have to find the person who's doing this so that I can make their work better. Again, I never want to duplicate. And so that's how it was different. People kept saying, we're really not focusing on trauma and resilience, or the people who were kind of going at it in a different way. Yes.
My name's Wade Hall with Equus Workforce Solutions. We run the TANF older youth programs. What would, I work with a lot of people who have had stressful situations and problems in their life. What would be my referral to them? Where do I send them for help?
Yeah, so we're wanting to create, this is not in our year one phase, but we're wanting to create something to where it can be, all of the resources can be funneled into one website, for example, or one app, so that people can see exactly what they have available in our community and who does what. Right now, there are lots of lists available where you can call, emergency helplines, who can try to point you in the right direction. But a lot of times it's really confusing on who actually does what, who actually has funding for what. And you're gonna hear dozens of no's before you finally hear a yes. And so the short answer is, if you have people and they are really needing some resources, you're welcome to reach out to me and we can have a longer conversation of what this could look like. But that's a very real need that our community has. And we're working to solve that problem. Webster County actually has a really great solution that we're looking into, kind of working alongside them to do some cool things.
I'll get back in.
Okay, sounds great.
Great questions. We've got time for one more question, and I'm gonna ask the last question here.
Hi, I'm Lucas Walker with Lucas Walker Business Consulting. So I have a two-part question. The first is, operationally, I'm not super clear on what you do. So I'll present the two things I think I understand that you do. One is you set up like a neighborhood watch council, essentially, that helps a community have a resource if there's domestic violence or issues going on, that has a in-community support and education process. And two is I heard a lot of kind of one-on-one stories from you directly working with people in more of a singular role. So operationally, what do you do? And the second part is looking for fundraising events. What would scaling allow you to do? How would you be able to scale that and grow that? So that's kind of the main question.
Yes, great questions. And I do think it got a little bit confusing. I do agree with that. So I've just been a teacher and a behavior interventionist for the past 19 years. So my success stories are individual stories. They have led me to what we're doing now and how we're scaling up. And so to go back to this slide without talking more about it, or I guess talking a little bit about it, we're going to be creating these neighborhood events to create more just collaboration within the community and help set it on a healthier trajectory. But we are going to be helping them have more understanding of how this trauma impacts their lives and how resilience builders can impact their lives as well. And so in those neighborhood, it's not necessarily a neighborhood watch, but that definitely will come from it. Neighbors looking out for neighbors, that community vibe. But it's really going to be an educational component, collecting data from the residents and their lived experience, and then having them take action and feel empowered in a sense of agency. They can actually make an impact in their community. Our goal is for me to walk alongside them in this journey and just create some more capacity for that to happen, so that I can eventually step away and they're going to keep doing their cool thing and I'll go help in another area. So funding will help us just ensure that that's able to happen for the length of time that that neighborhood is needing, and be able to scale it up. So Drew Lewis has reached out to us and asked if we could partner with them potentially for some trust things that they're doing. They're creating kind of a roadmap for trust building in communities. And so they're going to be, ideally, we'll see, documenting our journey so that we can then scale up and do this with other neighborhoods, or other people who are interested can go ahead and take this on. Because we've had some communities reaching out already saying, hey, we want to do that. And I'm like, we're going to look at the data, but I hope we can come to your neighborhood. So does that answer your question? Okay, perfect.
Great. One more round of applause for our speakers. And something with other hands in the audience, will you be around afterwards to answer some more questions?
Absolutely.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
And I have one more thing really quickly. Just to celebrate this wonderful occasion, I have made some handcrafted brownies for everyone. I actually have some in this bowl. I can kind of show you. Oh, the brownie. Thank you for the laughter. April Fool's, that was the thing that I was celebrating. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And I actually do have real brownies because this world is full of disappointment. We really don't need to create ways to be disappointed. But I do actually have real brownies for you. Happy April Fool's Day.
Thank you so much.